Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Practical Organic Living. In today's episode, I'll be giving you practical tips on how to grow basil from seed. Specifically, I'll be giving you tips on why you should grow basil from seed, when to grow basil from seed, and how to grow basil from seed. Why you should grow basil from seed? The most important reason is because basil is a warm seasonal annual. And what that means is that it does not grow throughout the entire year. In most places in the world, you can only grow basil for a certain number of months. That's because basil will die when the weather gets cold. Therefore, you want to grow basil as early as you can and harvest it as late as possible to maximize the window of freshly harvested basil. That's why you should grow basil from seeds, because you can get a head start on growing basil in your garden. Now, if you wanted to plant basil in your garden, you could go to your favorite nursery or big box store and buy a lot of basil and plant into your garden. Why would you not want to do that? Well, the most important reason why not to do that is because basil is actually really expensive outside. I think a container of basil will set you back around $4 here in the US, in our area at least. Meanwhile, it's a lot easier to grow basil from seed. Basil seeds germinate really quickly, they don't require a lot of care, and basil seeds grow really quickly into plants, so you can transplant the basil seedlings outdoors or into a bigger pot when your basil seedlings are big enough. So another reason why you should grow basil from seed at home is because what you'll find in the stores are usually just a few varieties, and mostly either Italian basil that you use for pesto or perhaps Thai basil. Meanwhile, there's a lot of different varieties of basil that I encourage everybody to try planting because they all have different tastes, and if you like the smell of their flowers, they all have different smells as well. So I'm going to hold up a couple of varieties that we like to plant. You can see here that there's lemon basil, a variety called blue spice basil, which is probably my favorite because the flowers smell like bubblegum. Thai basil here, it's great in stews and soups. And of course, Italian basil, which we love using for pesto. So these are just a couple of basil varieties that we plan to plant out in the garden. When to plant basil from seed? You want to plant basil out in the garden when it's not too hot and not too cold. The reason why you don't want to plant basil when it's too cold is because the basils won't grow, and those eventually die due to pests and different diseases. However, you don't want to plant basil when it's too hot outside because the young leaves are probably not going to be able to take the heat, and the plant will be too stressed and will be focusing its energy on producing flowers and not the leaves that most of us want. That's why you should be planting basil from seeds sometime in early spring. In our area, we try to get basil seeds started around March, early April. That way, the basil seeds have a chance to grow into strong seedlings that we can transplant into the garden so that they can grow nice abundant leaves for us to harvest and enjoy. Now, I'll be giving you practical tips on how to actually grow basil from seed. First thing you have to decide on is what container type you're going to be using. So containers come in all sorts of sizes, shapes, and materials. To plant basils from seeds, I decided to plant basils, as many basils as I could in a tray. That meant that I wanted to choose a container that wasn't so big. I have in my hand here a 6-cell tray. So what this is that I can pop a couple seeds into each cell. If I wanted to plant these outdoors or transplant them to a bigger container, I would just pop the basil seedlings out of the cell tray and put them outdoors or put them into bigger pots. The next thing you'll want to decide on is what type of soil mix you'll be using to start your seedlings in. For today's purposes, I'll be using coconut coir. It doesn't matter which brand of coconut coir you use. I think a lot of the brands out there work pretty well. And also, you could use coconut coir or peat moss. There are subtle differences to using either, or a pre-made soil mix, but I won't get into that today. The reason I'm using coconut coir is because it's light, fluffy, yet holds moisture well. And that's what you want when you're planting seedlings. You're not concerned about the nutritional value of the soil or fertility. You just want the seedlings to get started. And to get started, All seedlings really need is water and light. So what I'm going to be doing now is expanding this compressed block of coconut coir into a loose, fluffy, soilless mix that I can then put into my cell trays. So let me show you how I'm going to be doing that. So the process is relatively simple. I'm just going to open the bag up. I'm going to plop it into a container. Then I'm going to pour water in here and let the water expand. So let me show you what it looks like. You actually want to use more water than you think, because coconut coir or peat moss can expand to hold many times its weight in water. So I'm going to fill this about, I would say, at least the height of the block itself. And if it needs more water, then I'll add more water. But I think the amount of water I'm going to be putting here should be plenty enough. To speed this up, I'm actually going to use a trowel and break up the coconut coir. This will probably take a couple of minutes, so stay tuned. So another reason why you like using coconut coir is because it forces you to pre-moisten the coconut coir before you put them into the trays. The reason you want to pre-moisten your soil is because if you don't pre-moisten your soil, then the water will basically run off and your seedlings will dry out because there's no water. So what the soil looks like is something that's light and fluffy, but something that still retains a lot of moisture. Right? So if I squeeze the coconut coir into a ball in my hand, you can see that it keeps its shape, but if I crumble it, it crumbles like brownie mix. And that's what you want. You want something that's light, fluffy, yet holds a lot of water. So the next step I'm going to do is actually put these into the cell trays. So right now I'm going to be putting the coconut coir into all 72 cells. So the reason I'm compressing the coconut coir is because you don't want to leave a lot of air gaps. If there's a lot of air gaps, then the seeds will be exposed to too much air and they'll die because their roots will dry out. So what I'm going to be doing now is planting the basil seeds from these packets into these cell trays. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to open up my seed packet, and as you can see, there's usually a lot of seeds in a basil seed packet. So the number of seeds you want to plant into each cell tray or each cell is up to you. So what I like to do is plant a lot of seeds in each cell tray. The reason is because if there's extra seedlings that you don't want, you can use them for soups and salads as microgreens. And also, you're also welcome to use extra seedlings that grow to be big and tall for your pestos as well. So usually, I would say that I plant maybe 6 to 12 seeds per cell tray. And the planting depth of basil is not very deep. In fact, I would actually suggest planting them near the surface, because if you smother them with too much soil, I found it takes too long to germinate, and also they don't grow very well. Okay, so I've planted these basil seeds about a quarter of an inch, I would say. So now I'm going to be covering the basil seeds with the coconut coir here. So what I like to do is lightly sprinkle the coconut coir on top, because like I said, you don't want to smother the seeds too much, but you also don't want them to dry out. And the easy way to tell if you've used enough coconut coir or peat moss or soil to cover your seeds is if you can see the white gels on the seeds, because basil seeds are a little bit unique in the sense that they turn whitish once they are in contact with water. So a really good cue is to just cover the seeds so that you don't see the white gels. So as you can see, starting basil from seed is really easy and super quick too. So thanks for joining us as we started basil from seed. We hope you start basil from seeds pretty soon too. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel and see you on the next video.